Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We're joined today by Josh Gould, head basketball coach at Vista del Lago High School in Folsom, California. Coach, thanks for joining us today and being patient with me as my day got a little out of my hands there.
All good. Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Let's dive in. Why don't you take us through the journey? How did you end up at Vista del Lago? What were the steps in between, and how you got your first head job, any assistants in between, right? How you got started in this deal? Take us all the way back in the Wayback Machine.
Absolutely. It starts with me just being a horrible basketball player. Just straightforward. I was 5'5" as a junior in high school. I grew 9 inches my junior year, had no handle, could shoot the ball pretty well. But it really all starts for me being a very bad basketball player. I was a tennis guy growing up, and basketball is something, because of, I think, how bad of a player I was, I never got burnt out. And I always wanted to be around the game more and more. And a lot of the guys I grew up with playing, who were head over heels better than me, going on AAU circuits and playing D2, D3, playing professional sports, they have no interest in coaching now, because I think it has to do with how good they were, how much time they spent in. I never put that time in. So here I am. When I graduated college, I started working in tech, and I hated it. I couldn't do it everyone in my family was doing. My dad started in tech, my uncle, my cousins, my brother. I couldn't just do that. And the thought of just doing that for 30 years made me sick. And so I was working at a tech company in Mountain View, California. I ran into my old Stanford basketball camp counselor, Brandon, at 24 Hour Fitness. He was coaching at our rival high school. He was coaching at Gunn. And he said, "Hey, if you want to come help out a couple of days a week, cool." And I started, and I ended up being there every day for 5 years. Pretty soon into that first season, when I'm 22 years old, I knew, okay, I want to be a head coach. After that first year at Gunn, I started applying for head coaching jobs. Nowhere near ready, or should an AD have been thinking about giving me the keys to their program. But I applied. I went on 26 interviews over the next 4 years. And the school that I actually got, San Mateo, 5 years later, they actually said no to me too. It was late 2018. They were looking for a coach. Their coach had just departed. He was great. Marvin Liu, he's actually back. The person that they hired, they wanted someone who'd done it before, who they could just plug and play. And that person actually ended up being a mentor of mine, Drew Petiti at Leland. He did some amazing stuff with them over there. I think he won the section. And he only was there for a year. And then I reapplied in the spring, where I had some more time to be acclimated. And I got that job. And it was great. It was my first head coach experience. Was there for 3 years. And then I decided to move out this way. And I was done with coaching for a little bit. I was a little burnt out.
You didn't want to do the commute from Roseville?
What's funny is I thought about it for a couple of weeks, just going back there for a day or two, putting in some stuff, and then it was a weird thought process. But no, at that point said, you know what, I'm done for now, and met someone out here. And then I got the itch to start coaching again about a year ago. So coached 8th grade girls at Cabot Middle School. It was great. It was a fun learning experience. They were probably the funniest group of people I've ever met in my life. And then a couple weeks into that season, I thought, okay, I want to get back into this. I want to run my own program again. So applied to Vista, thankfully got the job, and here we are.
And you mentioned that you've been the head coach at Vista del Lago for all of 6 months. Talk a little bit about that.
It's different. It's coaching out here in Sacramento, the greater Sacramento area, to me is night and day compared to the Peninsula Bay Area. So many more people out here want to help, want to be a part of the program. Alums really value going to that school and wanting to come back and help out. Very quickly into getting that job, I brought on 2 guys that had went to Vista del Lago. They were part of the same class that made a state championship run in 2018. I think they fell 1 or 2 games short. And one of them has stayed on as a full-time assistant for us. And he's been unbelievable. Will Fitzpatrick, just a great basketball mind. He played at Sacramento State, and he's been just a godsend. And why I say that is those guys, those assistants who want to come back and really have played the game at such a high level, didn't get burnt out, want to keep coming back and coaching. That I didn't see a lot of that in the Bay Area. And so it's been really cool to be surrounded by an administration that really values sports, parents that have a lot of accountability and implement that with their kids, and then just the whole small town culture environment that rallies behind their team. It's a bigger deal out here, and I've loved it. I'm a basketball competitive guy, so I think it suits me very well.
No, that's awesome. And I was curious where you were going to go with that when it's night and day, but I can totally see that based on where you are in deep suburbia.
Yeah.
Vista del Lago opened up while I was still in Sacramento, and it's been the sibling to Folsom, right? That's a sports powerhouse, and Vista's had success across a handful of sports that compares, right? But it's very different than being in the middle of what you would call the peninsula area and just that bustling nonstop action.
You go from conversations with, and look, I had no real issues with any parents at Gunn or San Mateo, and just unbelievable families that brought me into their community, and parents that I still keep in touch with. But you deal with some of the questions of, why are we practicing, or why do we have tournaments during finals week or during midterms? This is the season. This is the commitment. And then out here at Vista, sometimes it's more of, hey, this kid, just notice this kid was playing in front of my kid for a little bit, just wanted to know why, and pick your brain. And I love those conversations a lot more. I mean, then you really start getting into the weeds of basketball and what that kid's like in practice and during games, and what as a coach, instead of trying to deal with schedule navigating around exams. So just an example of how sports are valued a little bit more.
Yeah. So talk about that. So normally I'd ask a question about being a head coach, but since you brought that up, let's talk through some strategies around that conversation with parents and engaging, right? Where the parents always want to ask you a question that's not about playing time, but it inevitably is about playing time. Talk about what you've learned in navigating those difficult conversations with both athletes and parents over your 5 years as an assistant, your 3 years as a head coach at San Mateo, and now your first 6 months of summer essentially at a new school.
Right. Well, as an assistant, it was great because you could do no wrong. You can't cut kids. You can't bench kids. You're the young 20-something-year-old who relates to the players just because of your age and all that type of stuff, and the parents love you. And then you get the head job, right? My rule has always been the same since I started as a head coach. I will talk to a parent via text, email, in person. We'll grab coffee, grab tea, whatever you want. 12 in the afternoon, 3 in the morning. I don't care. I will answer your call. If you're a parent of a player in my program, I value you so much because you've done an incredible job raising your kid to be a good person in my program. The catch is, if you want to discuss anything basketball related, your kid has to be there. Your kid has to be a part of that conversation, because while they're your kid 24 hours a day, you're not in practice. There are just a lot of things that parents don't have that visibility to. And for a kid, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, it's great for them to start having those conversations. That's not a fun conversation for anyone to have about playing time. I really have never gotten a call from a parent that said, hey, my kid's playing too much. Can you dial it back? I don't want my kid starting. He's better off. He's probably better off for you off the bench. You never have that conversation. So it's always a tough one, but the kid's going to get so much value out of that conversation in just seeing how two adults are speaking to each other with respect, having accountability, and they're going to have those similar conversations with their college professors and with their significant others, their first boss out of college. So that's really why I want them there.
So how many of those have you had in regard, and I don't need a number, but in regards to where does it cross the line between basketball related or not? And when are you inviting that kid in? How are you inviting that kid in? What's been the reception of that? Give us a few anecdotes of how that's gone. And have there been any situations where it was like, that didn't go the way I wanted?
Oh, and one thing I like to do is I tell my AD absolutely everything. And I probably tell him more than I need to, or more than I should. But I want there to be a complete paper trail of accountability, or hey, if this parent or this particular person now goes over all of our heads, hey, this were the events that led up to that. So I can have my back, and he can do a better job of having my back as well. It's happened very few. There really haven't been too many conversations. And when those conversations do happen, the parent always walks away with with more of an understanding. Hey, you know what? This we're playing over the summer. This particular kid, I want to put him in to see, hey, is he a good fit for the team? Is he a good fit for what we're running? Maybe for your kid, I know what I'm going to get already. Maybe he's a returning player. He's already played. I understand what he's going to give me in a game. This kid, I'm really not so sure about. So I want to give him more reps with our starters. I want to give him a little bit more minutes right now because, frankly, I'm unsure. And when you're that transparent with parents and you can build that relationship and they understand what you're thinking about, makes things a hell of a lot easier for you because they can now understand, okay, that's why he's maybe making the substitution here or there, and just you get everyone off your back and everyone's a little happier.
So 26 interviews in 4 years
Yep.
as a 22-year-old. Why would anyone interview me? I wasn't ready. And then when you finally get a head job, the implication is that you were ready then, which we both know is not accurate because you never are. What did you realize when you got to San Mateo after spending 5 years as an assistant at a pretty functional program, that you realized right away that you weren't ready, that you needed to figure it out, even though you thought you were like, I'm ready to go. And then it's no, you're actually not.
Yeah. And I tried to do everything myself. And that was a big mistake when I got to San Mateo. I tried to be the strength coach. I tried to be the disciplinarian. I tried to be the offensive mind, the defensive mind, helping out with the freshmen, helping out with JV. I was doing everything. To a certain extent, the varsity head coach should have his hand in every activity and know what's going on. But coming in without a freshman coach, there was no freshman team the year before. The JV coach stayed for 1 year and then decided to leave, and I did not have assistants. And there weren't kids that went to San Mateo that wanted to come back years later and wanted to help. So that's one of the biggest things is you can't do everything yourself. And at Gun, our coach, Brandon, had a really great system. A lot of people coming back from Gun that loved playing for him, that wanted to help out. People just around the community that wanted to help out as varsity assistants or JV head or freshman head coaches or help condition players. So we had all that. So I took, for at a certain extent, I took that for granted. And then I got to San Mateo, I'm like, okay, we need to do track conditioning. There's no one to run that but me. We need to do weights and plyometrics and all this other stuff. And you can get burned out pretty quickly. And the ratio of actually coaching to not coaching was really low. As you smile, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. There's just a lot of other admin stuff, making the schedule for all three teams. And here at Vista, a lot of that stuff has been seamlessly transitioned and taken care of. We have a strength coach. We have someone who's helping out with scheduling in the admin office. All those little things that someone from the outside probably wouldn't think about is done. I'm spending so much less time doing those type of activities and more time. All right, here's how we can put this guy into the offense, and here's what we're gonna go over tonight in practice. And it's been incredibly refreshing. Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah, I'm laughing because my buddy and I talk. He's the head coach at Sonoma State, and we talk often about how you want to coach basketball, you probably should stay an assistant because about 15% of your job once you become the head coach is doing basketball. The other 85% is doing all of the other stuff. And my job is elevated even more so on that in regards to what I do as the athletic administrator. And so I was laughing because, it was like, oh, I'm going to be the basketball coach now. No, you're not. You're going to be the eligibility guy. You're going to be the strength guy.
Yeah.
You're going to do all these things. And that's hilarious that the way you laid it out. So what are you bringing with you that worked well the last time? And what are you intentionally trying to shift in round 2 of being the head coach. And we haven't even got to the season yet. So usually my new guys are like, they just finished their first year. We're like going into it. So I'm like thrilled and super curious about, okay, this we're bringing with us, and this I'm intentionally scrapping, and I'm a new person on X, Y, and Z. I'd love to hear the strategy, and then we can circle
Yeah.
back postseason and see how it all went.
Yeah. So non-basketball wise, the conditioning is something that I'm taking with me. One of my mentors who coached at my high school left for my junior year, but Peter Diepenbrock at Palo Alto.
That's my guy.
He's great. I talk to him about every week about everything, everything. And he had a very strict basketball conditioning workout on the track, which my first year at San Mateo, we beat teams that we should not have beaten just because the third quarter they're leaning over, they got their hands on their knees, and we're fine. And it's a pretty grueling. Quite honestly, it's a lot of kids lose their lunch the first couple of weeks doing it, but it is such an incredibly valuable culture builder. And when I brought that to Vista, the freshmen are doing it. We got about 10 or 12 freshmen every Monday and Wednesday. We got about 8 to 10 JV guys. And then we have our 13, 14 varsity guys. We have 30 kids on the track Mondays and Wednesdays, freshmen through seniors. And that's been so cool in terms of building that culture. We got freshmen racing against juniors and sophomores trying to beat the seniors. It's so awesome. We have all these coaches out there and we're doing a mile, then 400s, 200s, 100s. And the kids are having a lot of fun with it. And that's something that I'm going to take with me every school that I go to throughout my coaching career. Something I've scrapped is trying to focus too much, basketball related, trying to focus a little bit too much on running a whole bunch of different types of offense. And San Mateo, we tried to do some Princeton stuff, but we ran them as individual sets. There was no flow, there was no continuity. And starting at Vista, my thought was what we tried to do at San Mateo, and I take accountability for better. We had some good years, but it was a disastrous flow of the offense. And I want to make sure that we can get into our stuff effectively, one thing leading into another. And that's been something that's worked really well for us. And you have time to put that in. You get the job in April. You have your open gyms. You're just putting in little concepts here and there, not really the on-court coaching, if you will, during the off season. And then during the summer, we have our AAU program that we run. So I'm able to put little things in here and there. And it's starting to come together now. And we have tryouts in a couple weeks, and I'm decently happy with where we are.
That sounds awesome. And where I'm at now, and I remember those days back at El Camino where we were basically off season 300 days a year. And now I'm at a place where all my guys are playing football right now. And my girls on the girls team are playing field hockey or tennis or whatever they happen to be doing. So how are you navigating that with any of your multi-sport kids, or do you just not have any?
This is the first year I do not have any football players. The first year. We might have one or two that might come out that just heard that through the rumor mill. But we had one guy who was a kicker. He got hurt and he just decided to go full-time basketball. And that's been it. So this is really the first year I haven't had to deal with that. I could tell you our girls coach, he's got 6 or 7 girls that are doing flag football. And I think that's awesome. And frankly, I'd love to have some guys that are playing football. They bring a different type of mentality to the team. I'd love to have some kids that run cross country that come try out. They bring a different type of conditioning mentality to the team. They don't get tired. And I miss that a little bit, but it's not something I'm going to sit here and complain about that, where we have 3 or 4 of our main guys playing football. And no, I encourage kids to play other sports. I think it's important. Go play football. High school football Friday nights is the most fun thing you'll probably ever do with high school sports. But no, I'm not mad that we have a full squad and we've been able to build all that continuity for a few months now.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the tricky thing, right? It's what's the balance? And
Yeah.
we all go through these different iterations of self and of being a coach and where we're at. And I'm at the point now where I was just telling Anthony, who was here, I love being a seasonal coach. We start November 4th, we finish when the playoffs are over. Coach, what about the offseason? Go play lacrosse. And it's like,
Yeah.
figure out how to do something else, cross train. We'll be back in the gym in the summer and during the season.
Yeah, exactly.
In your time at San Mateo, besides conditioning, what's the best thing that you felt you did within that program that you're also bringing with you, right? You obviously said you're looking at other offensive stuff, but you figured out a way to build culture, especially as an off-campus coach, which is really hard, especially when you haven't even started the season at Vista and you're new there, right? What are some of the things that you can offer others that have been successful for you?
It's a good question. I really like having, if it's an open gym, even if it's overlapping practices, I like having the freshmen do stuff with JV. I like having the JV do stuff with varsity. I like the kids feeling that, all right, I'm not just on the freshman team. I am a part of the San Mateo basketball program. All the kids are getting the exact same polo, freshmen through seniors. I want that to be a mark of pride. This is my group. This is my pack. This is who I belong with on campus. I think that's really cool. I was living pretty close to campus. I went to a couple of football games, and that was also exciting. We had a couple guys playing football. It was good to see the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, seniors that weren't playing football in the stands and stuff like that. And then that just being around them as much as I could, developing that year-round program is something that I really pride myself on and pride our players on for taking that initiative. And some of the guys over the summer were playing with us, then playing AAU, but able to build that year-round culture. And then whether doing team nights, whether you schedule some bowling nights or one day we started practice and I had just 5 of those red playground balls on the half court. And we're playing dodgeball for the first 20, 30 minutes today. It can get monotonous. You're running a year-round program and you got your open gyms in April and May, and then you're running your summer program. You have conditioning and open gyms in the fall. Sometimes you just got to let kids be kids, and they had a blast with it. And just doing things like that, throwing those things in every once in a while.
When you said that you want the older kids doing things with the younger kids, cross-level stuff, what does that look like other than just having the same gear?
Yeah, great question. That really starts with offensive continuity, doing the same things at every level, doing very similar things on the defensive side of the ball, having inter squad scrimmages where, hey, if there's ever some stuff that we need to work on as a varsity team, for example, offensively, if there's a backdoor quick hitter that we put in, hey, we need 5 to 7 JV guys. Let's just split the gym this practice so when we do scrimmage, we can have some shadow defense. And they always elevate each other's play as well. And I know the freshmen and JV coaches did some of that. So a lot of the same type of motions and type of offenses at every level, so that they're speaking the same language. And you don't have these coaches isolated, because it's also important. Player continuity is great, but coaching continuity is really valuable too. We have 5 different, 6, 7 coaches in the program. They're all incredibly different people. And not only, I don't want them to bring them together and make them feel like they're isolated on an island doing their completely own thing. Hey, this is what we're doing. Let's pass this down, start implementing a little bit, and make every coach's life a little bit easier.
I'm very curious, and I want to get in a time machine and fast forward 5 years to ask this question, but you can sit with this as you're going into this new spot, right? So you're basically 8 years in, right? 5 as an assistant, 3 as a head coach, and you're talking about vertical integration from a systems and strategy standpoint. And so the question I want to ask is, where's the line between I want them doing the same things and there's room for flexibility based on talent, based on ability, based on these other things? And the reason I'm asking this, and again, you might not have this answer right now, but down the road you will.
Oh yeah, I do.
So when I first got to El Camino, you could scout the freshman team and you'd be ready to play the varsity game because it was that tightly integrated. And by the time Where I'm at now, and this is how I've been for probably the last 10 years. It's philosophically, we are going to press, we are going to play kind of some 4 out, 5 out motion, dribble based stuff. What specials you run, those types of things, like I don't care anymore. It's more about the foundational philosophy than the details in the weeds, right? There are a handful of things that are like non-negotiables, but outside of that, I wouldn't say it's a 180, but it's definitely like way down the spectrum now. So I'm curious where you're at now and how you see that evolving over time, even in your iteration of the Princeton based stuff to start with.
Yeah, just to get very specific to answer your question, on the defensive side, I man to man as much as possible, all three levels. That doesn't really change. If coaches want to do a run and jump press or a man press, a zone press that leads back into a man, cool, that's fine. Offensively, with Princeton, you have your four main. You have your low set, point, chins. You have your chin series, and then that 5 out. That's been a little bit more modernized as coaches develop their own type of Princeton. So at our freshman level, for example, we'll just put in point. At our JV level, we'll put in point and chin. And then with the varsity, we're opening up the whole menu where we have our low set into point or chin, and then our 5 out. The JV and freshmen will run their own variations of 5 out as well. But as long as they just have an introductory view to that spacing and timing, that's all I really need. And that's going to slowly build the continuity over time.
Has that evolved in your 4 years? Is it something like first year, it's like we're all doing this and then you've shifted, or is that how you started from the jump?
Started this year. I think at San Mateo was a little tough. It was a little bit more on a freshman team was a little bit more on an island. JV team was on an island. Varsity team was on an island. Couldn't really put that stuff in like I really wanted to. That was a little tough. And I will say, and again, love the kids at San Mateo. I just think we have these kids coming in as freshmen and sophomores are just naturally probably a little bit better ball handlers, a little bit better passers. They can shoot it a little bit, and this is stuff that they can pick up a little bit quicker. And it all starts with the coaches. It all starts with my incredible freshman coach, Vic, being able to put time in to 4 days a week in the fall. My incredible JV coach, Matt Howe, working with his JV team. He's an intense guy. I love working with him. And my assistant coaches, Will and Coach Leonard Bridges, who was coaching at Rancho Cordova for over a decade. Without those guys, these coaches, none of this is possible. I can't stress that enough, how much I appreciate them and appreciate their time. Vic and Matt, our freshman and JV coach, what's so underrated is they have a really good coaching relationship and they bounce things off each other. If we're doing a basketball workout after conditioning, maybe one of them's running it, one of them's running a drill while the other one's sitting back. They have such a good back and forth, just like I do with the assistant coaches at the varsity level. It makes that happen. You can't incorporate any sort of fluidity or any sort of themes in your freshman, sophomore, and juniors and senior classes without those coaches who are really willing to do it and who really care. And pardon my language, who really give a shit, because you just can't. And as a varsity coach, like, those guys are, aside from my fiance, they're the most important people in my life right now, because they are the straws that stir the drink, and they make everything go. They motivate these kids, and like, we all do it for pennies on the dollar, right? And cannot stress how much I appreciate all the coaches in my program.
Yeah. Since you brought that up, we'll just articulate that for everybody listening. Most of us that coach education-based teams, aka high school sports, or in your case, last year, middle school sports, we're actually paying to coach based on, at the end of the year, if you break out your balance sheet and your P&L. Most of us are actually putting money into the school to do this. That's a great thing to remind people of, and to be thankful and grateful of in regards to the time that we're getting to help these kids. You mentioned that you spent a year coaching 8th grade girls. I've done the middle school girls team while I'm the varsity boys coach for a number of years purposefully to keep me grounded. What did you learn doing that you're looking forward to apply to this year's iteration of your varsity team?
Patience. And I'm not just applying that to my varsity team. I'm applying the patience from that team in life. You'll have a girl that will make a 10-foot floater in a game, and then she doesn't get back on defense because she's dancing because she's so excited that she made a shot. So you're dealing with a different aspect of competition. Now, I really love the teaching aspect of it because during practice, a lot of these girls, they play competitive club volleyball, they're playing club soccer, they're athletes. A lot of them, this was their first year playing basketball, but it was really cool because most teams we played were not as skilled, we're not as big, but we were really quick, we were fast, and we were competitive. The girls really wanted to win. And they got really competitive. And while they were so competitive, they managed to work with each other incredibly well. They never went at each other. They always built each other up. They always encouraged each other to shoot the ball, to be in the right area if we were running a zone. And that type of a teamwork. That's something that I look at varsity and say, you know what, we have no excuse. This is how we're going to be because they can do it. So we're going to do it. And that was a really cool experience for me.
So what would lead you to believe that the varsity kids, the boys, wouldn't want to do it? And how are you going to work through those conversations when the noise gets in the way?
If they don't, we're running. We're on the track. There are track days, Mondays and Wednesdays in the fall. We could more than happy move one of those days to a mid-January day if I feel like we need it. That's what we've done in the past. We played a team and I felt like we did not give enough effort. We won the game, but we were on the track the next day when we did a full track workout. This group in particular is a very senior heavy group that I have. They've grown up with each other. They know each other very well. We had 2 transfers come from Folsom that grew up with these kids as well, and they've embraced them and part of the family. That really doesn't happen. That hasn't happened yet. Now, granted, we haven't started losing games yet. We haven't lost one game. And I think when that does happen, your safety net is how have we built our team culture up to this point? If someone gets on the ground during practice, everyone near them's got to rush over and pick them up. We're always constantly clapping. We're getting our touches in every time we break for water during practice, or every time we're about to leave practice. We always got to get our touches in, fist bumps, high fives, whatever it is, because winning teams get their touches in. There were studies done on the 2013 Spurs, or I'm sorry, 2014 Spurs with Kawhi Leonard's rookie year, I believe, and the 2008 Celtics that won with KG and that big three. Those teams led the league in things like high fives, shoulder taps, fist bumps, pats on the back. And I think that's really important and underrated. Someone comes off on the court, we're all up. We're all up high-fiving that guy as he comes back to the bench. I don't care how disastrous the defensive or offensive sequence he might have just had. We're up, we're high-fiving. And so I think that would mitigate a lot of turmoil during the regular season. These guys are already so tight-knit and have been doing this now for 4 or 5 months.
So while you're somewhat early in your head coaching career, you've been doing this for a while. Got some great mentorship. You mentioned Yosh earlier off camera. You mentioned Deepan Brock and a few others. What have you taken away from those people specifically?
Yeah, biggest mentor I've had in this has been Brandon Williams, my first coach at Gunn. How inclusive he is. He took a lot of guys on his team. He took my second year, he had 16 guys and I think 4 practice players. So we had 20 guys part of the program. He gives guys a chance that deserve a chance. While most coaches don't. Most coaches look at the difference between a 12th and a 13th man and say, okay, who's the best one that's making this team? While Brandon is looking for who's doing the right things, who's win or lose, who's playing basketball the right way. And from that, from how he treats his players, from how relatable he is with his players, that has been my biggest mentorship. that I've had so far. And then, with Diepenbrock, it's a lot more of the little basketball details, spacing, timing, when to apply pressure, when to do this, when to do that, situational stuff. So those two have been by far my biggest mentors, and I don't ever see them really stop being mentors. Spoke with Brandon last week. He was on his way to the tournament, as was I, and I texted with Diepenbrock yesterday. So those two guys I'm very thankful for have been a really huge part of my journey.
So what would you say, based on all the things you've learned from them and how you've applied those successfully or not, what would you say you've most recently changed your mind on in regards to, I used to believe this and now I'm over here and here's why?
Yeah, great question. So the previous coach at Vista last year took 15 guys. I'm probably going to take a little bit less than that. I think keeping a more of a tight knit roster, I think will help us out a little bit more. Diepenbrock's track workout, for example, he just did the whole thing right away. Whereas at Vista, we've been building and building up to the full workout. And you have to take everything with a grain of salt. I mean, Diepenbrock's been an incredible basketball mind to me. And we talk a lot about the Princeton offense, and where he sees guys playing and different sets out of it. He also, he also coached Jeremy Lin, right? So he also had an incredible class that one in every 1,000 of us might be lucky enough to have in our coaching lifetime. And he made full advantage of it. They lost 3 games in 2 years. As a public school, that's unheard of, beating teams like Midi and Mater Day and all that stuff. So he's just incredibly impressive. But we've had to tweak a little bit about what we do. Just he had guys that play more back to the basket. We don't. He had more guys that can create more off a dribble and isolate. We don't have that. So putting in different types of things in the offense to use each other a little bit more, I think has been a really key thing for us.
All right, I'm going to ask a potentially complicated question based on what you just said in your
Sure.
description of Brandon and the mentorship and how inclusive he was and the way in which he set that up to give people a chance. And yet you are, sounds like, intentionally choosing not to do that. How do you reconcile that?
So I think that's a really good question. I think there's a balance. For example, the type of off season that we do, the track conditioning and the weights and the running and all, that was not at gun. And I think when you put that in, kids naturally are going to cut themselves and release themselves from the program and say, hey, you know what? This isn't for me. So I really haven't had to do that at Vista. There aren't like all these, oh, I see these 4 or 5 kids not really making this team. There really isn't that. Now, like I said, when it comes down to that 12th or 13th guy, and I don't know if we'll have this problem at Vista this year or not, but what I'm taking from him is that 13th guy, is he going to give me a ton of minutes and impact winning during games? No. But he will be an absolute dog in practice, and we'll go at our starters, we'll go at our rotation guys and make them that much better. And so that 13th guy has to have good grades, has to be a high character guy, has to be doing all the little things to make up for maybe that slight lack of talent, which is why he might not be playing. That's the one thing I'm taking from Brick, because that 13th guy, if it's between Billy and Joe, is way more talented. But Billy does all the right things, and both of them are the 13th best guy. I'm taking Billy because he's going to be an extension of me, and that is contagious. Those types of things are really contagious in a program, and so that's something that Brandon did an incredible job of, and still does every year, and that's what I plan on taking with me.
Yeah, and I think something you just mentioned that doesn't necessarily get addressed directly all the time is how are you setting that kid up for success? Because if you're looking for the 13th most talented player in that spot and that kid thinks there's some pathway to see in the court, then you're setting everyone up for failure, right? There has to be a conversation around, this is what I'm looking for in number 10 through 15, and you're not playing, and this is the role you're going to have to embrace. Do you want to do that? And I think that step is missed so often, which then leads to resentment and these other things. How have you seen that play out, and how do you plan to create role definition that leads to success rather than adversity?
That's a great question, and there are a lot of misses with that, with a lot of coaches in the area, not only here but in the Bay Area, and it leads to parent conversations, it leads to principal conversations, and it all just starts with a simple conversation of transparency. Over the summer, I took each kid aside and I said, "Hey, this is where I see you. I see you as a top 7 player in the program. Hey, you know what? Right now, I see you around number 10 in the program. You know what? Right now, I see you on the outside looking in." And I let kids make their decisions from there, but I'm very blunt, very transparent. And I think that's a really important thing. So, for example, for that 13th guy or 14th guy, whatever, we'll have, if he's not going to play, if I just don't see a path for him getting minutes, we'll be a practice player where I'll need him and his parents to sign a contract. I'll sign it and I'll say, "Hey, you've done all the right things. I want you a part of this program. I think you're a phenomenal kid. I don't feel like you are ready to play in games this season." And just so there's accountability. So every time we have a game, we have 28 games. It's a lot of games. And the last thing I want is a kid suiting up, warm ups, ready to go, and then never see the floor and having that kind of feeling of disappointment. It's better to go in knowing, okay, this is my role. I'm a practice player this year. I will not see the floor. I'm not hopeful that I'm going to see the floor. So that everyone is on the same page and you have complete accountability in the program. I think that's huge.
So how does that compare to your 30-30-30 guys then, right? Up 30, down 30, last 30 seconds. Because that's a completely different deal. Defining a kid, you're only a practice player versus, hey, look, you're on the team, you're never playing unless 30-30-30. Right. Meaning, I'll give you a better example. So our current boys coach played for me in Sacramento. And when he was a junior, freshman year, he got cut from the program. Sophomore year, he got cut from the program. Junior year, he did everything all 3 of those years except get to play during the season. And I was like, "Hey, man, look, if you want to be on the team, I got a uniform for you, but you will never play. If everybody gets hurt, I'm bringing up the whole JV team before you play. Do you want to be on the team?" Yes. And then he started for us as a senior and we won a section title. But it was like that blunt.
Yeah, and those are the conversations that you have to have with those players. And I think the luxury is, I think a lot of those players have seen the writing on the wall. And hopefully this happens with every program every year. Hopefully kids say, "You know what? I might be a 30-30 guy, 30-30-30 guy. This probably isn't for me." I don't know if I have a lot of those guys. I think one of our guards who isn't really a great shooter, probably isn't the quickest guy out there. He takes charges every single game, and we need him. We have another player who is having trouble grasping some of the fundamental concepts of the offense. He is an absolute dog on the defensive side of the ball and just has absolutely no fear. So I'd like to think now, and this is October, we're not in January, but I'd like to think now that there are situations for all those guys. And I think the smaller roster you have, the fewer 30-30-30 guys you have. And the more everyone's playing, the more tight knit you are. And that's your group. And people have that much more accountability. And you don't have that kind of, what is it, that loose lips sink ships type of quote where, you get guys that are unhappy, they start talking, and then now you have a leak in the boat. And having that small roster, as I touched on earlier, really mitigates that. And it creates that kind of top-down approach where I'm now empowering my seniors and my guys who are getting the majority of the minutes. Those are the leaders. I'm not a coach. I'm not a leader. I'm a coach. And while I like to think I have qualities to lead and I love running a program, I do not want to be the leader of this team. I want to coach this team night in and night out and have seniors do that, because kids will listen to they'll take that to heart with what their peer is saying and what their coach is saying.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
So
The other cliche, right? A player-led team is going to beat a coach-led team any day of the week. So
Any
good,
day, any month of the year.
right, for that. All right. What is, last question here. How do I want to phrase this? Do you have a favorite failure that you lean on in regards to your growth and development as a coach and a leader that you point to in this moment that it was transformational in the sense that it has allowed you to do what you do now?
Yeah, I think one thing I've changed my philosophy on is dads being in the program. When I first got to San Mateo, and I don't want to single it out to dads, but typically if a parent's going to coach, it's probably going to be the dad. My philosophy is no parents part of the program. My last year at San Mateo, we had a dad whose son was on JV freshman, and he helped out with varsity. Best assistant, just an unbelievable guy. Our JV coach right now, he has a son that will play JV. Our freshman coach will have a son that's a senior for me. And so we have two dads in the program. And you know what? It's great. It builds. I don't have now. Let me preface that by saying I'm not going to have a dad whose son's on varsity come help out because I don't think that. I think that's a little more conflict of interest. But dads can make great coaches. Dads can be bipartisan, and they know their son. If their son's a really good hooper, they've probably grown up around it. They've been around basketball their whole life, and those are guys that would want to help out for free. I think that's great, and I really love having them be a part of the program.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time today. Sorry we had to move the start, but glad we got
No
it in.
worries. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.